Hi there, my name is Gael Gallagher. I'm a visitor essentially to this area. You'll very quickly notice the proper English I speak. I'm from the Boston area. I came out to visit a mere 41 years ago. My brother Scoop was stationed at Fort Ord. That was a basic training center during the Vietnam War. I came out to visit my brother, and I essentially never went home again. I came out here with my shorts and my aloha shirt, and I froze to death for many, many years until I succumbed to the climate that we have along the central coast of California. I had the opportunity at that time, which I call my prolonged adolescence, to travel all over California and all over the Pacific Northwest. And my heart and my body and my soul was drawn back to this peninsula like a magnet. I have worked in the hospitality industry for my entire life, and for the past 21 years I have been a tour director. I get to share the beauty of where we live in a variety of ways with thousands and thousands of people throughout the year. When a client calls me, whether it's 2 guests or a meeting planner with a bus full of clients, I listen to them, and once I get an idea of what they want to do, I share the beauty in the limited time frame that they give me. I've been a volunteer guide at the Monterey Bay Aquarium for the past 21 years, as well as the Point Lobos State Reserve for the past 20 years. And with all of the wonderful people I have worked with there, botanists, geologists, marine biologists, I have learned a lot of the natural history here. So as I take people on tours, I like to have them experience this area in the best way that they can. People, when they're visiting, are on a little window of time, and a good tour director should be able to impart their passion for where we live and give them a great opportunity to use the extra time that they have to enjoy this area. So I do tours of the history of Monterey. I like to use Steinbeck in my tours because he talked so eloquently, so often in so many novels, and that we have many opportunities to actually drive through the pages of his books here. Most people that read John Steinbeck get to read his words and he evokes the image, but we have the extra added attraction of driving through his pages. So I bring that influence into my tours, I guess you would say. So my office is the great outdoors. I'm often on buses, perhaps on foot, maybe in a limousine, taking different peoples from all over the world, introducing into this area. It's a passion of mine, and that's what I've been doing for the past 27 years. But I learned also in my career for the past 27 years that local people often take for granted where they live and forget what we have here. And they think they know what's happening here, and they kind of forget. So I think even they could enjoy a tour with someone that's passionate about the area. First of all, I'd like to welcome you to the Monterey Peninsula, this beautiful point of land that sits off the central California coast. It sits conveniently 110 miles south of San Francisco and 360 miles to the north of Los Angeles. And it sits at the southern end of a body of water called Monterey Bay that's considered to be the focal point for marine research in the entire world. Cold ocean currents often move down from the north, warmer currents come up from the south, and plants and animals from both climate zones tend to transition here in Monterey Bay. We also have a lot of different habitats for a great variety of plants and animals to live in. The peninsula includes 4 communities, and Monterey happens to be the most historic city in California. It was the first capital of Spanish and Mexican California. The Americans held their constitutional convention here in 1849. It's steeped with history. Part of Monterey is New Monterey, also commonly called Cannery Row, a stretch of ocean frontage that was immortalized by John Steinbeck in the novel by the same name. Steinbeck starts his novel, he says, Cannery Row in Monterey, in California, is a poem, a stink, a grating noise, a quality of light, a tone, a habit, a nostalgia, a dream. Cannery Row is the gathered, the scattered, the tin, the iron, the rust, the chipped pavements, the weedy lots, the junk heaps, little crowded groceries and flop houses and whorehouses. Its inhabitants are, as the man once said, whores, pimps, gamblers, and sons of bitches, by which he meant everybody. If the man looked through another peephole, he might have said saints and angels and martyrs and holy men, and he would have meant the same thing. That's the way John Steinbeck opens his novel, Cannery Row, and then he talks about the cannery workers that lived up in the hills, and he talks about Mac and the boys and Doc Ricketts, his very good friend from Chicago, and our first environmentalist of this area, who used to study the intertidal zones along the California coast here. Today, Cannery Row was reborn, and descendants of those cannery workers came up with a new idea that the fish that come here now are the tourists with the green dollar bills in their hand, and they're certainly most welcome. Today we have fine shops and restaurants, and at the far end of Canterbury Row, we would have what John Steinbeck and Ed Ricketts would be most pleased about, the Monterey Bay Aquarium, considered to be the best aquarium in the world. Said not so much by visitors like you and I, but said by other aquariums. And for those of you that want to find out what's inside our bay, what's beneath the waters, you go to the aquarium, because they very realistically recreated the habitats of Monterey Bay, from the shale reefs to the rocky shores, the sandy seafloor. They recreated a kelp forest. And in the newer wing of the aquarium, they have a window that holds back 1.2 million gallons of water that takes you offshore, so you can see the marine life that lives offshore. As you continue past the Canterbury Row area, you come into my town of Pacific Grove, where I've lived for the better part of those 41 years. And it's a sweet little town with a beautiful waterfront, little cottages, Victorian homes. It had divine beginnings as a religious retreat back in 1875. It happens to be the butterfly capital of the world. You're not the only visitors here right now. We have tens of thousands of monarchs that come from as far north as British Columbia. They travel at 10,000 feet in the thermals, and they arrive at a certain grove of trees here in Pacific Grove to winter. On a sunny day, they burst out of those trees, and it's like butterfly confetti all around you. Right around Valentine's Day, they mate. And in the springtime, when the milkweed flowers, those butterflies fly into the milkweed, a day's flight away from here. They lay their eggs, and they die. Their job is over. The next 4 or 5 generations of butterflies will head to the north, and they'll only live 1 month each. And once again, it's that migratory generation that leaves in October and comes here in November. That's the long-lived generation, lives here 8 months. John Steinbeck talks about them wonderfully in his novel, Sweet Thursday. The next town that we would go into on the Monterey Peninsula would be that pristine and private community called Pebble Beach. A lot of people think that the 17-mile drive originates there. However, it really originated at the old Del Monte Hotel in Monterey. That is still there today. It's now part of our Naval Postgraduate School. People left the hotel in 1881 on a tally-ho, a horse and a carriage, and they came around the peninsula, Monterey's waterfront, around what's Canterbury Row, through what's now Pacific Grove, and they would enter a forested area, gated at the time. They were paying 25 cents per person, and they would eventually stop at a pebbly beach to gather seashells, to gather agates. They'd freshen up, they'd water the horses, and they left the Pebble Beach area, that it's called today, and went past the ruins of the Carmel Mission and back to that Del Monte Hotel. That was 17-mile drive. A lot of people, when they visit there on their own and don't need the tour director, race over to an entrance to Pebble Beach and get their map and pay their money, get to see the beautiful waterfront and all the golf courses and beautiful homes, but they might miss some of the other commentary about these other unique towns that make up this Monterey Peninsula. At the southern end of the peninsula, we have the last town that was developed on the peninsula, Carmel. And although I might emphasize the fact there's Carmel and Carmel by C. This town got established back in 1888 when a man named Santiago Duckworth came down from San Jose, and he was trying to sell lots in Carmel. And he wanted the town to become like Pacific Grove had become, a religious retreat. He knew the Carmel Mission was nearby. He tried to sell lots. It was a very hard sell. In 1902, he sells to Devendorf and Powers. These developers want Carmel to be exceptional. They want it to be for educated people, artists, authors. He actually sells a lot to the president of Stanford University. That was 1902. In 1904, Mr. Slevin owns the post office in Carmel, and he needs to buy some more post office box locks. They come in a package of 6, and Mr. Slevin thinks he's overbuying. He buys those post office box locks, and in 1906, the San Francisco earthquake happens. People move down from San Francisco, they relocate, and all of a sudden Carmel is on the map. The Bohemian Society from San Francisco that included people like Jack London and Mary Austin, some authors, some artists, move there. They tell their friends up north, come down to Carmel, you'll be inspired by the beauty here. So by the 1920s, Carmel gets to be on the map. And there's a famous mayor there I think you should know about. There's Clint Eastwood, of course, that was mayor from 86 to 88. But in 1920, Perry Newberry ran for mayor to handle the new population of the Carmel. And this is the platform that he ran on that will distinguish Carmel by the sea from Carmel that surrounds it. He said in 1920, if you hope to see Carmel by the sea become a city, if you want its growth boosted, if you desire its commercial success, if street lamps on its corners mean happiness to you, if concrete pavements represent your civic ambitions, If you have less regard for the unique character of Carmel by the Sea than for the opportunity for making money, if you think a glass factory is of greater value than a sand dune, a millionaire than an artist, or a mansion than a little brown cottage, if you truly want Carmel by the Sea to become a hustling, bustling, wide-awake, lively metropolis, don't vote for me. He won. And maybe that today is why Carmel by the Sea has no numbers on its houses, no postal delivery, no sidewalks in its residential area. There's no hot dog stands, there's no neon signs, there's no stoplights in its downtown, there is no cemetery, there is no jail. The good news is you can't die there and you can't get in trouble. But anyway, each and every one of these 4 towns in the Monterey Peninsula are very unique. And once again, as a tour director, I'd like to introduce you to that. So once that you leave me, or any tour director that has a passion about where we live, and we can extend that passion to you, you'll understand what to do when you leave us.